I broke 90 and 85 in 1 year of playing golf, and I could have done it in half the time if I knew what I know now. And although I'm not an expert golfer, I've watched practically every tutorial on YouTube, so you guys don't have to, and I plan on only sharing the best advice that has gotten me over the hump of breaking 90 and now consistently shooting in the mid to low 80s. And in this video, I'll go over the best drill that helped me control my speed on putting and almost completely avoid 3 putts. And all you need for this drill is 4 tees and 3 balls. And then I'll split this video into 3 parts, where part 1 goes over setting up the drill, part 2 goes over how to do the drill, and part 3 goes over how the drill translates to the course. If that sounds good to you, stick around, because I promise this speed control drill will help you more than anything else out there, and trust me, I have tried everything else. Alright, now to get into the video, in part 1, this drill will be called the ladder drill, and what you're going to want to do is set 4 tees 10 feet apart in a straight line on a flat part of the putting green. It should only take 30 seconds and it should look something like this. I'll quickly demonstrate for you. And before you place your tees down, it's important to know how to accurately pace off 10 feet. You'll understand why it's important later in the video, but to accurately pace off 10 feet, we'll start by learning how to accurately pace off 3 feet. And some of you guys may already know how to do this, but for those of you that don't, we'll start by using your putter. Most of your putters are going to be 34 or 35 inches. If there's something different, then just adjust accordingly. But what you're going to want to do is take your approximately 3-foot putter. You're going to want to place it on the ground, put your toe where the club face is, and then your next toe right at the end of the shaft. And then learn how to get that feel of learning how to pace off that 3 feet. So now that you understand how to pace off 3 feet and you've gotten a feel for it of what a 3-foot pace looks like, now to pace off 10 feet, all you're going to want to do is take 3 paces, which would be 9 feet, and then to get to 10 feet, just place 1 foot in front of the other, and that'll be 10 feet. Now finally, set up the drill, and after doing this once, it's going to be much easier to do going forward, so just keep that in mind. Alright, now moving on to part 2 and how to actually do the drill. You're going to want to start by taking your 3 balls and placing them on one end of the ladder. So this is the first tee out of the 4 tees in a row. Take your 3 balls, place them at one end of the ladder, and your goal is to get each ball in a row within 1 foot in front or 1 foot behind the very first tee. So from 10 feet away, you want to get within a foot in front or a foot behind. And before anybody freaks out about missing a 10-foot putt 1 foot short, this drill or these tees are not supposed to represent holes. This is strictly to get your speed down, and from 10 feet out you should have about a 10% 1 foot margin, maybe even less, but if you're looking to break 90, then that's a good margin to have. And this is just a speed control drill. I'll explain later in part 3 how this actually translates to the course, and it'll make much more sense then, but for now, just keep that in mind. But back to the drill. So you'll keep going back and forth with these 3 balls until you get 3 in a row that are within 1 foot in front or 1 foot behind of the tee. And so, you know, you'll go real quick. Let's say that one's short. That one's perfect. So I got 2 out of 3. I've got to restart. Go to this end of the tee. Set up your balls. And then you got to try to get within 1 foot in front, 1 foot behind, 3 times in a row. So too long. It's a little downhill. This is not too flat, but. All right, 2 out of 3 again. I'd have to restart. I can measure it, 1 foot length. Don't have to be this exact, but look. So you can clearly tell 1 ball's out, 2 balls are in. I'd have to keep going until I get all 3. All right, so moving on, let's assume I just got all 3 balls within 1 foot in front or behind of the tee, and so now I'd be moving on to the second tee, and that's the 20-foot tee. And then again, using the same 10% margin of error, for the second tee that's 20 feet, we're gonna wanna get within 2 feet in front or 2 feet behind of the tee. And again, same thing, you gotta get all 3 balls in a row between 2 feet in front and 2 feet behind. And then once you get that, you'll move on to the 30-foot tee, which is the very last tee on the end. So you'll be going end to end from the 4 tees you set up. And for that one, same 10% margin, you're going to want to get 3 feet in front or 3 feet behind, all 3 balls in a row. You can't move on until you get that. And then finally, once you get past the 30-foot tee, we're going to move on to the last part of the drill. And that's going to be putting the one ball within the 10-foot tee margin of error, one ball within the 20-foot tee margin of error, and then one ball within the 30-foot tee margin of error. And you got to get all 3 balls in a row to close out the drill. So to quickly demonstrate, it'll look like this. So 10-foot tee first. All right, we completed that one. 20-foot tee next. That's probably in 2 feet. And then 30-foot tee last. And that's probably within 3 feet in front. And that'll do it to close out the drill. It should take no longer than 30 minutes. Hopefully it takes around 10 to 15 minutes, but it'll really dial in your speed for any green. And if that sounds too easy, I promise it's not. It's much harder than it sounds, especially if you're struggling to break 90. But if it is too easy, you can always shorten the margin. So rather than using a 10% margin of error, you can use a 5%. So for the 20-foot tee, you'd have to get within a foot in front or behind. Within the 10 feet, half a foot in front or behind. 30 foot, 1.5 feet in front or behind. So you can switch up the margin of error, or you can add more balls that you have to hit in a row. So you could add, instead of 3 balls, you do it with 5 balls. And if you want to get real crazy, you could do 10 balls, I guess, or something like that. But I promise you, if you're able to do this drill consistently and efficiently, 3 putting will not be your issue for why you're not breaking 90. All right, and finally, now to part 3 and how this translates to the course. So before we get into it, I just want to say too that part of the reason why it's so hard to control for speed as a beginner is because you can't look at the target that you're aiming at. For any other sport where you have to be accurate, like darts, basketball, whatever, baseball, you've got to look at your target. So in golf, where you're looking down at the ball, getting your stroke right, it's hard to focus on speed while you're looking down at the ball. That would be like shooting a basketball while you're looking down and you gotta throw it up. It would be damn near impossible. So the reason why this drill is so good then is because it gives you a target in your head to practice. So rather than just looking at the target, feeling it out and trying to hit that distance, with this drill you actually know what your stroke is for 10 feet, what your putting stroke is for 20 feet, what your putting stroke is for 30 feet. So you have something to think about in your head to aim at, as opposed to trying to just feel out the target. And that feel takes years and years and years of practice. So the pros can do it, but for us that started after college or after just any time later in life, rather than trying to spend years developing that feel to get good at speed control, it's much better if we can speed up the process and have a number in our head and putting strokes that we know go a certain distance. The only caveat for this to work though is you have to pace out your putts on the course. This is exactly why Bryson DeChambeau, if you see him, he paces out his putts. It gives him a number in his head to think about that he's practiced a bunch of times before, and it just makes it much easier to have more of a real process as opposed to just a feel thing that can only come with years and years and years of practice and thousands, maybe millions of putts hit. And I get it, some of you may be worried about looking stupid pacing out your putts in a casual round of golf where you're trying to break 90 or whatever it may be. But I promise you it is much more casual than you think. You don't have to be super meticulous and make sure, okay, it's exactly 3 feet. Like, no, walk up to the flag, take the pin out, casually pace out 3 feet all the way to your ball. Get a quick estimate of the measurement. It doesn't have to be exact. And it's much more casual than you think. Also, if it still really bothers you that you have to pace out your putts on the course, I promise after enough practice of doing this drill at different distances, so maybe you do 15, 25, 35 feet instead of 10, 20, 30, you'll get a really good feel of just being able to look at a distance and know how far it is. And so at some point you probably don't even need to pace it out. If you don't have time or you're worried about looking stupid, after enough practice of doing this drill, you'll be able to look at the hole and go, okay, that's just under 20 feet. Or okay, that's right in between 20, 30. That's probably about 25 feet. I'm gonna do my 25-foot putting stroke. So if pacing it out really is a big deal to you and you really don't wanna look stupid in front of your friends, great. Practice this drill on the putting green, the practice screen enough times, and you'll be able to just guess the distance really easily. It's not hard. I do it probably half the time I'm out on the course also. And just to cover some of your concerns, I think a common question will be, what will I do about slope or speed of the green? Obviously, not every course I play is going to have the same speed as the practice green, and not every putt I hit is going to be perfectly flat. And that's a really fair question, but my answer to that was it's actually much easier than you think. With just a little bit of practice, you'll quickly get good at gauging what distance in your head to take off the actual distance of the putt. So for example, let's say you have a 30-foot putt, but it's a little downhill. With just a little bit of practice, you'll be able to know, okay, a little bit downhill, 30 feet, I'm gonna hit this my 25-foot putting stroke. And then sooner or later, you'll get real good at doing that, and you'll still have the number in your head, even though it's not the exact number to get it to the hole. All right, and I don't wanna make this video too long, so I'll wrap it up here. I hope this video helped those of you stuck around to the end, where you now have a real way to practice controlling speed that will quickly get you better, as opposed to just the feel that takes years to obtain. And then in future videos, I'll go over how to stop missing short putts, how to aim your putts properly, which is a big deal, and just a few other things that I wish I knew sooner that played a major role in getting me finally over the hump of breaking 90 and 85. If that sounds interesting to you, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments any questions about this drill or anything you guys would like to see going forward. And finally, to close out, thank you to everyone who stuck around, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.